Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Peter Jarek. I'm the head of GSMA Intelligence. And I'm excited to kick off this Telco AI Summit. I think, a bit of a background. As some of you know, there's a summit tomorrow around enterprise AI. And hopefully you all know enterprise digital transformation, enterprise 5G, big focus of this event. If you didn't know that, you might be in the wrong place. Was excited that after we saw that, we talked with some of the content folks and said, that's really important, but so is Telco AI, because we know operators are still a big constituency and they have their own issues that they need to face. And there's a huge opportunity for them. So room for a Telco AI Summit. Really great to have this opportunity. So thank you all for joining us. Please stick around. We're going to have some great keynotes, some great panels, thanks to our platinum sponsor, Microsoft. And I'm going to kick things off because we want to keep things on time. So I won't ask for a show of hands. Actually, I'm going to ask for a show of hands about how many of you know who GSMA Intelligence is. But I'm going to close my eyes, and I'd like to see the show of hands. Put your hands down. In my mind, it was all of you. So that's why I closed. I'm sure it was every single one of you. For those of you who don't know, we are the research and consulting arm of the GSMA. Shorthand means that I have the privilege of leading a team of smart, curious analysts whose job it is to understand telco and communications markets and really help everyone in the ecosystem, operators, vendors, integrators to execute on the opportunities of mobility and connectivity. Bunch of data points up there. Don't take a picture. You can get the slides. But if you know who we are, your customer, thank you. If not, and you want to work with us, you see any of this that's interesting, please reach out. So I originally called my intro sort of 24 questions for 24 just to scare people. But I'm going to try and give some background of why we think Telco AI is important and the questions we're asking in that we'll try and talk about during this session. So, I think at a very basic level, unless you've lived under a rock, you sort of understand the broader Telco AI and AI context is just everyone's talking about it, right? I mean, who didn't see, who here was at MWC in Barcelona? Bunch of you. Yeah, who didn't come away from MWC Barcelona without this feeling that AI stole the show, right? It sort of took all of the air out of the room, and we know there's a reason why that is, right? AI is not just hype, not just something that dominates trade shows, but something that enterprises, every vertical, telcos included, are thinking about. It's actually impacting industries. But more than that, there's a lot of stuff we don't know, right? We're still learning about it. And that's why sessions like this are really important, hearing from smart people, because we need to learn about it. These are some findings that we had. If you look at it from MWC, we saw the big takeaways, right? Yes, it was the huge side of the show. We understand that there's technology, but also business issues, right? It's what we were calling the softer side. People trying to figure out the ROI. Always surprises, always implications. Main thing is, this is the topic of the day, right? Topic of the day, not just for the industry. When we looked at what operators were doing at MWC, and we went and we said, hey, not just, and this is a bit of a plug for some of the work that my team does, right? I'm always very sort of reticent when I look at an analyst report that says, here are the top takeaways from MWC. And I talked with these people, and this is what I learned from them. That's great, but that just tells you what one analyst heard from the people they talked to. When we go out there, case in point here, we actually canvassed all of the operators, looked at their announcements, looked at their booth, right? So it's a benefit that we have here, and we could actually use data to back up what they were talking about. Probably not too surprising. Data showed AI, along with B2B services, were the big things that telcos were talking about at MWC. Broadly explains why we're here talking about AI at a show focused on enterprise services, right? It's what the operators were talking about. It's what the operators were talking about. We see that continually there. This is really small, so I apologize, but send me the slide if you're looking for it. We see it not just on the network side, not just on the services side, not just on the B2B side. We look at something like IFA, and I'm sure you'll see it at CES this next year as well. Focus on the consumer side as well. So I'm going to give a bit of a background of why we think it's important. a bit of a background of what we think some of the issues are. I've asked this question all sorts of times, so if you've been in an earlier session with me or on a webinar or something, I apologize. Who here remembers the early days of 5G when we were discussing what the 5G use cases would be? Right? I think a lot of us do, right? And you remember that sort of triangle, right? 5G was all about enhanced mobile broadband, scalable IoT, right? Low latency communications, great. Obviously, the vision, though, beyond any of those use cases, was enabling enterprise communications, right? It's how do we expand the audience from consumer broadband to different verticals to allow operators to address more revenues. Remember that, right? Not too surprising. And we hear 5G has been a huge success. Right? We get that question all the time early on. People were saying, "Ooh, 5G's had greater uptake than any other mobile broadband technology." And they sort of threw that out there, like, was it real? You look at the numbers. The numbers say that, right? Compared to 3G, compared to 4G, quarter by quarter basis, huge uptake. That's why you hear people talk about 5G as a success. That doesn't, though, talk about the issue of has it been a success and what we really wanted 5G to do. New revenue opportunities for operators. And when you look at that, when you look at the numbers, and along the bottom here, we've got your 5G markets. Again, share the slides with you. You can look at this. There's an even cooler version of this that's actually interactive, so you can actually dig into some of those countries. What do you see? You see across the globe, when we look at telco ARPU, change over the last year versus data traffic, I think we all know what that says. It's probably not too surprising. ARPU's barely budged. And in many cases where it has budged, it's gone down. Data traffic continues to go, right? We're not seeing that 5G revenue bump that people are really hoping for. And in some cases, right, you look at the countries, you look at some of the countries that you see huge data rate increases. 5G has been great for them, right? If it wasn't for 5G, would we be able to support that growth in data traffic? Probably not. But we haven't had that revenue growth. So when I think about Telco AI from the analyst angle, here's the question, right? We get that AI is a really powerful tool that can help industries, all sorts of industries, right? Telco included. The question, though, for me is understanding the struggle telcos face, particularly on monetizing 5G, growing in new businesses, innovating. How is telco different? What does AI mean to them? And how can operators execute on that opportunity? So with that as a background, I'm going to give some questions here that we've been looking at based on some of our research that will hopefully lead us into what we'll be talking about over the course of the day. So I think at a very basic level, the main question is, what are the telco AI use cases? You sort of have to start every discussion with that, right? And this is some work that we do with operators every year. We reach out to them, try to understand what they're doing with their networks. How are they transforming? Every year we see the same thing, making money, right? Customer experience, new revenues, beats saving money. But the bigger question for telcos is what do they want to do with AI? Is it internal versus external? Right? Going back to that making money versus saving money. I titled this in the beginning. Is it really AI for the use in their own networks? Or is it focused on building their networks to support AI? Right? These are the questions we see when we talk with telcos they're facing. And we'll obviously dig in more here because we understand what they want to do in growing their business. That's not necessarily what they are doing. You really can't talk about AI and you can't talk about telco network transformation without the idea of sort of the relationships between telcos, hyperscalers, cloud providers, right? What I think is interesting is we sort of see this always positioned as enemies, right? How do the telcos play with the cloud providers? And maybe it's different for each of them, right? Are they partners? Are they competitors? And the reality is when we go and we talk to operators and you ask them this question, you see that they don't necessarily see competing with cloud providers as a huge strategic focus. You see this at the bottom, right? When you ask them, what are your business priorities as you're thinking about your network? It's security, it's regulation, it's sustainability. Competing with cloud providers versus partnering, bottom of the list. It's a great thing, right? That's how we might be able to grow the market versus worrying about competing. At the same time, we do have to recognize there's sort of different things each side of the equation can provide. How can they work together? What are some good examples? I'm hoping we can get some good examples. Core versus edge. Where will AI live? And it's interesting because I think back that I think we've all been talking about edge networking for years. I was having a conversation at breakfast about this. And I think it's been maybe almost a decade that we've been talking about edge networking. And we aren't quite there yet with seeing it in full scale deployment. What I think is interesting though is when we go out to operators, again, it's from some work we did from our research, and we asked them, okay, so generative AI, it's going to have some impact on your network. What do you have to invest in to actually support all the new Gen AI use cases, all the new Gen AI usage? You see edge compute come on top. More than overall network capacity, more than training. And yes, those of you who are looking at these numbers and past grade school math recognize that they do add up to more than 100%. It's because we allow people to do more than one response. There's never just one thing. But surprisingly, you see this edge compute as the one thing operators think they're going to need to invest in more than anything to support Gen AI. Now, does that make sense? Do they know why they need edge compute? Is it about latency? Is it about security? Is it about sustainability? What's at the basis here, right? When does AI at the edge make sense? We're kicking off some work with my colleagues in strategy at the GSMA. This is a really important question, right? We heard inferencing at the edge is going to be a huge telco opportunity. Why? When does it make sense? And what do we need to do to bring together the cloud players, the silicon players, the telcos, to actually have something that leverages edge, cloud, core, everything in between? Of course, you can't answer any of that without answering what the edge is. Where does the edge exist? Is it in the device? Is it at the base station? Is it somewhere else? These are the questions that we're looking at. Again, I'm really talking about today during the panels. This is a big question that we've been grappling with probably since we started talking about AI over the last few years. And we struggled with sort of what is the term for everything that's not Gen AI? Because what I saw from operators early on when Gen AI became such a focus was, we've been doing AI, but we're talking about Gen AI now, like AI is new. Like as telcos, we've been doing AI for years, right? It's part of our networks. It's part of what we're doing. Why are we talking about this like it's new, right? And we recognize there's Gen AI. There's all sorts of other AI that's being used. We calling it here core AI for lack of better terms. And the question that we were struggling with is in sort of the chat GPT era, are we focused enough on everything else? All the stuff that's not Gen AI, right? And this question of, is Gen AI driving a broader focus on AI and usage, or is it hindering it? Because we're focused over here when maybe we should be focused more broadly on what AI can do, right? And really the question is one more useful than other for telcos? And if so, which one? And how should we be thinking about Gen AI as part of that? We all know it's been incredible, right? And you can do some really cool stuff with Gen AI. But if it distracts from the broader value proposition, is that a good thing or bad? I had a question early on about why Gen AI was, such a big topic around sustainability. And I had someone come to me and say, I don't get, like, we're talking about this, like, it's just another workload. Why are we talking about the sustainability implications? And I said, bear with me here. And it was for someone who's very non-technical. I'm not going to say it was my wife, but maybe it was my wife. And I said, so do you remember back when, like, crypto was a big thing and you couldn't get any of those NVIDIA chipsets because they were all being used for crypto? Yeah. And you remember all those discussions about how all the crypto mining in the world uses as much energy as like Argentina? You know what those NVIDIA chipsets are being used for now? Oh yeah, it's all AI. Yeah, so let's think about that, right? Clearly the solutions right now are not necessarily the most power friendly. And even if they were, increase in usage alone tells you you're talking about a new power consumption model. Some work that we did recently as part of a report that it's not out yet, it will be soon. And it's looking at sort of the amount of energy being used by telcos, being used by cloud. This is already a substantial amount of the energy usage in the world. If we talk about exponential new growth and things like AI, you can imagine what that's going to do. Right? So the question is, as we think about AI, should we think about it in terms of its energy consumption? Or should we think about where AI can save on energy? How it can make networks more efficient? How it can make the radio access network more efficient? How we can actually use it to be more efficient, more sustainable in our networks? Big question for me, though, is are we ignoring what we call the enablement effect? If you can use AI to make your workers, to make your business more sustainable, more efficient, is it a net gain? And of course, my favorite question most recently, can the industry actually, unless we think about how to make AI more efficient, power efficient, generate enough energy to support it? When you're going back and restarting nuclear power facilities that maybe you hadn't in the past to support some of these needs, that tells you something. You know, one of the things that I don't think we talk enough about as an industry, my colleagues here at the GSMA talk a lot about, though, is responsible AI. When we get caught up so much in some of the business side of things, the technology side of things, how we roll out AI with solid governance and ethics is really critical. What does that strategy look like? Beyond risk management, how should we be thinking about operations, right? About responsible AI. And maybe for this group, what can telcos do to show their commitment? Because they've been leaders in so many ways in terms of how AI is being used, in terms of how data can be used responsibly. What does that mean for them in terms of AI? And this is one of the last set of questions before we move on to our keynote. I'm just about on time. Do telcos have the requirements? Do they know what they need to do? And do they have the foundations in place to actually execute what they need to do for AI? Went out with the huge value propositions being within the GSMA and the research and consulting side, access to operators, right? So we did some work around AI maturity. We're building out a benchmark. Look for that soon. And we asked a bunch of questions about how ready are you, the telcos, to execute on AI? It's one of my favorite questions. Right? You can read the whole question there, but it's basically about, is your network optimized, right? Is your IT infrastructure optimized for AI? Right? Can you move your workloads where they need to be for optimized AI performance? Now, if you look at this number, right, and you see the slightly agree, moderately agree, but the 22% around completely agree, who thinks that number makes sense? Yeah, I'm good. I was going to take anyone who raised their hand aside. I mean, the idea that 22% of operators completely agree that their IT infrastructure is optimized for AI, I see some smirks in the crowd because that's crazy, right? That is just insane. And maybe we talked to the people in telcos during their coffee or edible break or whatever it was, but I worry that telcos don't fully understand what needs to take place, which is not great, but it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for the ecosystem, including everyone here, to help educate and make sure we're all on the same page, to make sure operators have the right skills, the data infrastructure, and that we're all being honest. So this is, the last set of questions for me. It's the known unknowns, right? There's a bunch of other questions that God knows what they are out there, right? I mean, given the investment requirements, how do other sizes of telcos benefit? Big ones, they'll be okay, right? And the small ones take care of themselves. Do we need a telco-specific LLM? Are we in an AI telco bubble? These are the kind of the questions that I hope my team is asking itself, hope to address today. For those of you wondering about this wonderful picture, we're talking about AI and GenAI. The fact that I can just go in and say, generate a picture of AI robots with a corgi and a pangolin. Yeah, that's really, I don't know. I think that's crazy. I found this. I generated this. I did not find this on the internet. I'm happy to iterate on it for anyone who wants this. And if it keeps you up at night, I apologize because it is a scary picture. So hopefully over the course of the next few hours, we're going to get answers to some of these questions. These are just a set of the folks here. So I appreciate everyone's here. And with that, let me hand over to our first keynote. Dario, it's all over to you.
So thank you. Pleasure to be here. I'm Dario Scacciati. I run Telco Media for Americas at Microsoft. And today I was asked to come and talk about AI. And I see a lot of the questions that were being risen there, very interesting. But instead of doing a pitch, and I'm not trying to do a pitch, since I'm going to share a little bit of what we learned and the conversations that I have with CEOs, around the region, and what keeps them up at night, and what are the learnings that we are getting. And so the first one is, when you are tasked with Gen AI, first of all, AI is everywhere, right? And today is in vogue and everyone talks about it, and is AI this, AI that. And the first thing that you feel is completely overwhelmed, right? And, the second thing that you feel is you have a ton of questions, right? Because they are asking you, and every vendor is coming to the telcos and saying, we want to do everything, right? And we want to transform, and questions about, impact, and every little product now has AI and wants to transform you, and you to rip off the old and come with the new. So the first thing that we need is a strategy, right? A strategy, and start answering some of these questions that we have here, right? Implementing Gen AI is going to have an impact, is going to force telcos to transform, is going to have an impact in your culture, in your people, in the people that you hire. So you need a plan. You need to strategize. You need to strategize of where you want to go, and where do you want to have that impact, and where do you think that Gen AI is going to impact more in your own business. And believe me, there's some trends that we're going to talk about in telcos, but every telco is a little bit different, right? And also, you would think that everyone already bought into this. The education at the SLT level, at the board of directors level, needs to keep happening, right? Some people are not fully convinced. Some people are still questioning, and that is risky, right? It's risky because the lagging is going to be a problem. When this starts to be implemented, those that are not in the bandwagon are going to, suffer the effects, right, of being behind. So you need to answer questions. You need to ask yourself questions, and therefore you need to strategize. You need a chief transformation officer. You need a head of data and AI, and these people need to work in unison with network and with the CMO, and have a unified strategy. And talking about unification, one of the pillars of all this, when you start doing the strategy, before starting to even talk about one business scenario, you got to talk about security, number one, right? It was named, ethical AI, name it how you want, but it's ethical AI and security on top. I would differentiate both. And sub-regulation is a must, but I would say, have a governance model, right, that forces you to work with companies like Microsoft, like other hyperscalers, and people that are in the middle of this, join some of those alliances and you're going to see that we see it, we put a lot of guardrails for AI, right? And I'm happy to receive 1% to 2% less results, but I know they're safe and they need to be, we're done. Second, don't fall into the traps until you understand and you answer your own questions, right? There's going to be temptation of having some things on-prem, of doing, custom LLMs. This is complicated, right? It's costly, right? So my suggestion and advice usually is the same one that we went when cloud was coming up, right? And everyone was saying, hey, let's move everything to the cloud. Is pace yourself, create a plan and go where it makes sense. So most of the impact that you're going to see, and if you want to create it into buckets and where you can go explore first, is reimagining the customer is number one. That we're going to talk a little bit. There are a ton of new weapons and ways of exploring and understanding, uncovering that customer that you don't know, that you have 5 attributes and you need 10, or things that you are today, very dependent on some vendors to go do intelligence. Now you're going to own that power. And with that power, you can influence and impact in every line of business, right? And within those line of business, I'm going to tell you a little bit of where I see the better return to investment and where things are happening or make sense better. That is going to come up with the intelligence and AI and the network and everything, new business model, right? And the speed to market is going to increase 2, 3, 5 times. And the more AI gets intelligent, and it's true what they're saying, that we are in the emphasis, right? It's really, really early, right? It's cool. It's really revolutionary what we're seeing, but it's nothing comparing to what is coming, and it's going to accelerate. It's going to be a snowball effect, right? More and more and more. So you got to have a company that is agile, right? If you can't absorb these changes, there's going to be trouble, right? And this changes got to be in a secure environment, know what to do so you don't throw away budget, right? You are targeted in what you do and the impact that you want to have. And of course, that comes with a technology revolution. So, the first place is I would say, instead of focusing a little bit on customer experience, I'm going to talk about what it makes sense first. That is productivity or your own influence. That I feel that is the easiest way to to start exploring AI, because it changes everything, right? It really changes everything. What you're going to start to see is that AI takes care of all the easier tasks in an automated way. And you free up your employee to add more value, right? And so they waste less time and they focus on added value work. And that's how you become more productive, right? So I'll give an example that happened to us. It is not easy to get used, but some of them are, like Teams. Teams has a feature that records, if you're willing to record the meeting that you're having, that takes notes and action items automatically. That has changed the way we work. The amount of time that we freed up our employees of just taking notes and sending action items that happen sometimes 1 or 2 days after, because they clean it up. This one is automatic, right? And you don't have to have an employee focusing on taking notes. It changes the way you work, right? So employee experience and how you do your work, you're going to make them happier. It's a different way of working, modernized, definitely a way to go. Then I would say the biggest one is elevating your customer experience, right? The impact that Gen AI is having in customer care is second to none. When you put it in a bar and a graph, the return on investment and the fast pace that you get behind it is 3 or 4 times next to the second scenario, right? And customer experience is a lot, right? We are talking about a lot of different scenarios inside customer experience. But that is a place to start exploring in little things, right? The bots of the old world, they're old, right? There's nothing to do to what they are today. So I would start exploring customer care. I don't know if you've seen, we have a really cool announcement offered with Amdocs that we integrate them into Dynamics. We are verticalizing and we are investing in that area because we really see that the return on investment is, and we'll go over some metrics, after this. Also is your relationship with your customer. Everything that you do when you make and your impact in self-serving, in having the information sooner and faster and with the right response, it also is easier to upsell and cross-sell and impacts that retention. So the second area I would say that is easy to impact is churn and customer satisfaction, which is super important, right? A 1% impact there represents a lot of money. The training of agents, of your own agents, right? Now you have Copilot, and instead of thinking how many people are going to be the impact, no, think about how more efficient that they're going to become. Because now the AI is going to intercept the workload and can tell you and advise the agent and what decisions to make and what the information is. And they don't have to learn all these new manuals and everything that comes out. It just happens for them immediately, right? And it's served to them like options. Okay, this is the option that you have for your customer. Some of those tasks take care automatically, and some of those tasks, they have to be the common sense person, because you don't want to delegate. There goes against security, and ethical AI. You don't want to delegate that to a machine yet. You keep exploring that. Operations, supports, billing. This is kind of common sense. I would say that is things that you gotta keep analyzing in the same way that it was the movement to cloud. What does it make sense to go automate and to put Gen AI on top of that? Billing is one of those that it makes perfect sense. OSS and BSS in general, it makes perfect sense. Modernize your network. You don't need to bring the network to the cloud if that is not what you want, but applying AI to your network to analyze and come up with new products and services, that is definitely an area that you need to explore, and that we're seeing a ton of carriers investing a lot of money in those areas. And it changes because it has also immediate impact in creating new SKUs and creating new offers, especially with gaming being so hard and coming up so fast. And then unlock new revenue streams. And here I was looking at the charts that were put up there, talking about ARPU and how flat it is, and it's true, right? So when 5G came out, every telco out there was talking, okay, this is going to be a revolution of B2B. Revenue comes from consumer, but growth and profit is going to come from B2B. We're going to invest a ton. And the reality was that the market wasn't ready, right? A little bit of that here in the US also, the recession and COVID didn't help, but the reality is that the market is finally ready, and the consumption and the apps are not there, right? To really justify 5G at the pace and at the scope that we were expecting. So you got to look at different things. One of the areas where it does make sense and is ready is, I call it like 1 degree of separation. The telcos, sometimes attempted of jumping the scale and going from traditional telco to a techno, like completely off board. And I would say do what is 1 degree of separation, what you do well. Like you grab a company like Rogers that says, our hero is still the phone. I want to innovate around the phone first, right? And I think that is the way to go. Now, the telcos also have this ability of being able to transform faster into a managed service provider, right? And in the areas where it makes more sense, let's say computer vision, right? Computer vision are solutions that are needed in the market that create real big impact, that to your end customers will save a lot of money, but also they're easier to deploy, easier to maintain. You don't need to become an SI to go and be in that space. And that is used in manufacturing, retail, automotive, healthcare, a lot of those areas. Or take advantage of some of the hyperscalers and software vendors out there like us that have, solutions like Dragon, for healthcare, where they save in the automation of all filling the forms that the doctors have to do at the end of the day. The number one barrier that we have there, believe it or not, is the lack of reliability of Wi-Fi in the clinics and hospitals. And that is a perfect place for you to go in and use this service of SLA as a bundle for connectivity and have and say, hey, Mr. customer, I'm going to do an SLA of connectivity for you, and I'm going to put, 5G or Wi-Fi whenever I think it's better for you, but I'll give you the reliability that you need, right? And you got to find those partners and that 1 degree of separation. This is what I do great. How can I go? And slowly you start performing better. But also I would say that the last point I want to make here is in new lines of revenue or all new ones and how to make more money and more profit and how to solve that ARPU is around marketing, right? It is around advertising and it is about understanding your customer better. And this is not unique to telcos. And I call that telcos are not just telcos, right? Telcos are also retailers in their own right and advertisers and marketers in their own right, right? You can slice them and say, I want to analyze the telcos, the market and retail, and you completely can do that. And we do that a lot, our EBCs, and we bring our retail partners in and a marketing partner. So think about this, is media, retail, and telecommunications, specifically those three, suffer from almost an anonymous customer in the end, right? You take information out of the billing, cable companies do too. You don't have the information that a Facebook kind of have, right? That is called now, because everyone calls it targeted marketing. So either one think it is or it's not, right? And so they're calling it now hyper-targeted marketing. So how do you do hyper-targeted marketing or laser-targeted marketing? Targeted marketing is done by combining all these forces, right? And having a way of understanding your customer better so you can sell better products and services to them and get more money out of it, right? So I'll give you an example. One of the biggest metrics the telcos have is lower cost of customer acquisition. The cost of customer acquisition is really, really high to get the new customer. So you can help telcos get net new ads by understanding your customers better, by putting GenAI in marketing, by combining your data with other data sets, getting a copilot on top of that allows you to optimize your campaign, but understand your customer better. And so understand that I can reach you instead on MWC24 or, watching, Sunday Night Football. That is a very costly place to go, but I can also find you at REI because you like to go outdoors and hiking and instead of paying $2, a person, a click, you can pay 20 cents. That is one. The second one is you become an ISV. Telcos sell data with geolocation, but what if you can enrich that data to the point where you can really do hyper targeting? Now you have a unique data set and a unique service that nobody else has that's selling those insights, not the data, the insights as a service is really important. And it also is going to empower the telcos to go and take that back the yellow pages. For us, they have a gray hair. You know what that is about? When I started selling into telcos, it was a big part of the revenue, right? And now that is less important, but you can gain it back. So there's a lot to do. And I just left you with the three most important for me, right? Security, customer care, people, or actually, and generative marketing. And I want to leave you because I think I have a couple of minutes and I want to leave one or two to do some Q&A if you guys want, is in the impact that we see in another customer, right? And Toby, and Vodafone has seen a really large impact in this, what I was saying of the quality of the engagement with the customer. And you can make up what number that number represents for your company, right? If you would go and send 66% of the calls being automated, resolution is fast, and customer satisfaction is high. Now we can start concentrating on other stuff, right? And getting creative. The network we talk about, right? The fast, reliable, applying AI network, I think is something, key, but it also will enable AT&T coming up with new products and services in a faster way, right? Now, it does require that you think it has a big churn in skill sets and the type of employees that you need when you move the network to the cloud, right? It's not the old telco technician. Right? It's a different. That's why you need a cultural transformation and transformation strategy behind this, because if not, this change is gonna caught you by surprise. And Telstra is our flagship example for all the employee transformation, satisfaction, and productivity, which I usually want to say is us. We always do dog cooling and we try the products first internally. And I'm already, going to be 56. I'm not the early adopter I was in my 20s or 30s. And when teams and these things started to come out, I was like, okay, what are we going to do now? The transition to the cloud and the first generation cloud services were more impactful for me as an employee than AI. AI and productivity just saved my life, right? Like I create PR reports. I do, the other day I was coaching my team because we were creating some solutions, how to create some white papers. And actually I told them and said, start with Copilot. Tell Copilot to create this one, and then you start adding value, right? You start correcting Copilot and say, okay, of the 3,000 words, 1,500 go to the trash, and I'm going to add here the value, and this needs to go there. But now it is possible to have a GTM strategy in less than a week when it would take you a month, right? Or two. Right? The research that you have to do that behind, it's you get the answer, you don't get a website, right? So, this is something that we need to invest in. What I've seen here, and I close up with this, is you have telcos that have gone all in, telcos that have tiptoed into it, but eventually everyone says, okay, I made a mistake, I need to go all in. And if you talk to HR will tell you, you need it all, right? You need it all at once. Because there is a little bit of a ramp up in onboarding for this type of scenario. But once that ramp up goes through, the acceleration is incredible in productivity. So that is what I had, for today. I'll stress more about security and learning and transforming and having a strategy to do this, but go focus on the easy tasks. Go focus on the biggest ROIs. This is going to be win for you. You're going to be lesser risk. If you're having an ROI, let me see. I know we are among friends, but I can't say what I can't say. But Microsoft has a really big impact in customer success. Right now, we were prepared, in a different way, but we saved a large in the hundreds of millions in the first 9 months, right? In productivity, in customer care alone. And then, we did the transformation of moving in COVID from the local retail store, brick and mortar, to online in 10 days without disruption, without losing or having to fire an employee or losing a customer, right? And that had to do that we were prepared. You have to unify your data. That is another big one that I should have mentioned, right? With security, you need to unify your data, clean your data, structure your data, and have quality data. Once you have that, then the journey is a lot easier. But there's a lot of preparation, a lot of thinking, a lot of confusion. Organize yourself, pick your top 3, and then go for it. Have fun.
To them. So let's go into our first panel right now. So I think if we bring up the intro for the next panel. Oh, I've got the clicker. Talking to myself here, aren't I? There we go. So let's bring up the folks for our first panel. And if you all come up here, then we'll introduce you all. So while we're turning on the microphones, I'll let everyone on the panel introduce them. And I do this because, not because I'm lazy and can't remember people's names and titles, but I'm always amazed how when you read someone's bios, I know you guys don't always provide bios, but you see PR people will either send like the 3-word title, Andres does this, 3 words, and you'll see the 2-paragraph title of Andres likes to jet ski and has 3 dogs and 2 children and I never know the right level that anyone wants to share. So I'm gonna let everyone introduce themselves, title as well as what they do. Andres, why don't you kick us off? Okay, hello. Working is working.
Well, my name is Andres Gil. I'm really excited to be here. I work for the telco and media industry, basically here at Microsoft. I've been working at Microsoft several years and working in the industry for 20 years. Okay, so very excited to be here.
I'm Joel. I'm running the processor and security business at Marvell Semiconductors.
And my name is Elena Fersman. I'm at Ericsson. I lead Ericsson's Global AI Accelerator, which is a central AI organization making sure we deploy AI technologies in the portfolio.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cristina Rodriguez. I'm Vice President and General Manager of the Communication Solution Group for Intel Corporation. Great to be here.
I'm excited that when we're lucky enough to pull this panel together, that we ended up with, obviously one of the top infrastructure providers, top silicon providers, as well as top cloud providers. I think we've got the right people here for this. So I'm going to kick off with a single question. And it's one that I sort of started my session with is, very basically, what are we seeing in the market in terms of the Telco AI value proposition? How are they actually using it? I talked a bit about the telco benchmark work that we do, and when we ask operators, they're not surprised, they come up with the basics of what we're already seeing, right? Network planning, optimization, customer experience, new revenue streams. Does that match what you're seeing? And do we have any good examples? Andres, you can, you start off.
I will start.
Sure.
My team is ready. Thank you very much. So I was looking up that Dario was here before me, so I can elaborate on top of that. We are seeing 4 pillars basically that we're evolving right now on how AI is implemented. The first one is the customer, how we are addressing the customer, elevating the customer experience. The second one is related to modernization of the networks. Then we are having improving the business and the operations, basically systems. And then we're having the generation of revenue. You're talking about optimization and planning. Yes, this is included also for us, but this is a consequence of modernizing networks and improving your business systems, okay? When you're doing all that, you're constructing end-to-end architectures that allows you to implement all the functions that you're having to all the CNFs, all Telco AI. And when you're doing that, you are having common functions like data, platforms like GenAI, and all those that you can take and implement on top of that, security. So yeah, we are seeing all this being implemented. And then as a consequence of all doing all that, we're seeing the network optimization online, okay? So this is one of the use cases that we're having.
Does that match for the rest of you? Does that seem?
I think we are seeing primarily chatbots.
Chatbots?
Primarily.
I can say from a perspective of telecom equipment vendor, I think it's pretty accurate what the answers that you get from the telcos, because the first one, infrastructure utilization, it's about the cost structure. The second one about the customer experience and make sure that your customers are happy. And the third one is the new revenues, the new values, the enterprise business, and so on. I think what's hidden in there, if I take from my perspective, that takes like one step back in the value chain, is also obviously the features and performance of the network equipment as such that you can optimize with embedded AI that maybe it's not always even visible there. And the second one is obviously CO2 optimization, energy optimization.
Yeah, pretty much great perspective from everyone. I would say, first of all, no question that AI is going to play a huge role in the future and that we are all talking and looking into it right now, operators, teams, and just the ecosystem in general. The way I look at it is, for me, there are 3 categories on AI when you look at the network, right? Number one is the AI applied to the infrastructure. So what can we do to make the infrastructure more optimized, more automated, more, anything that you can reduce cost of operation. And that's the energy efficiency, predictive maintenance, those kind of things. The second category for me is the algorithm itself. In the case of the RAN, which is very close to me, how do you apply AI to the algorithms, the radio algorithm, to make them better? Radio efficiency, spectrum efficiency, channel estimation, you name it. And then the third one is, how can we apply AI to get revenue, to new sources of revenue? For example, my favorite example, the slicing, right? Radio slicing. So that's the 3 categories that I see.
I mean, in terms of, maybe we'll just continue with that trend. I mean, in terms of the actual use cases that we see telcos providing. I mean, Elena, you gave some ideas, but are we seeing good use cases along those lines, Christina? I mean,
absolutely. I would give you a couple of examples. We have one demonstration, for example, with Vodafone in network slicing, radio slicing, fantastic results. We did with AT&T energy efficiency, fantastic results. And another example with Deutsche Telekom, we did a beamforming AI application. So definitely, yes, we're seeing the results. The key here, and this is important, is that it has to be better than the best, right? So the baseline has to be high enough, and then you have to apply AI and see the results better than the best, number one. And then the number two is when you put it at the system level, then we see a lot of different use cases, but you got to make sure that when you put it all together, you see the result at the system level.
I mean, and I was actually really quick, as we go to you, Joel, I mean, your suggestion of chatbots being how you're seeing it sort of seemed a bit disappointed that we're not seeing more. So, I mean, what do you think we should see more of on the AI front that maybe isn't being done?
So AI is like TCP/IP or C++. It's everywhere, and you can use it in many ways. Today, where most of the use cases are very rudimentary, they are building on top of the large language models to primarily deal with customer care in the form of chatbots. That's by far the deployed use cases. Christina and Elena, they are very right that there are other use cases that the telecom operators, the vendors are experimenting with, whether it's improving the massive MIMO or whether it's predictive maintenance and other concepts like that. Those are by and large still in the trial and concepts phase, where we do see a little bit more traction in terms of new revenue streams is actually in a space that no one mentioned so far. All the hyperscalers are hosting a bunch of GPUs that you can lease, and they are generating quite a lot of revenue from that, just like they are leasing processor CPU capacity. Because there are limitations on how you can distribute data. Right? There's a privacy regulations. There are a lot of regulations that limit data from leaving geographical boundaries of a particular country, for example. So we see smaller countries deploying, using the telco infrastructure to deploy GPUs such that they can sell services to customers. So we absolutely see things, but chatbots are by far the most popular.
Andres, what are you saying?
Well, there are many use cases I would like to highlight some of them that we are seeing right now being implemented, productive right now being worked. And there are some others that are projects that are starting to be worked because of the capabilities that we're having now. So, for instance, the very quick ones like the super search algorithms that we're having right now that allows you to give answers rather than a bunch of information that you are taking out of that. Second one is agents. I would like to say not only agents, one agent, but multiple agents working, providing solutions. Okay, for a particular scenario, customer interface, internal scenarios in which you need to run processes. These multiple agents are able to construct and give you different perspectives. Okay, when you are having an answer that you need to have. Then you are quality assurance. Right now, what you are seeing is that you are able to get 100% of the 1 million calls that you're having per month or something, and you are able to get all this information and you are mastering and using everything that you're getting. You are not something that before you used to have 1 or 2% of these 1 million calls, you have sampling information and you were not really getting the full picture, okay? So these type of scenarios are right now possible. And then you see close to new scenarios and use cases that I think are really important, because when you are having all this information, you have dashboards, and you are having conclusions day by day of the things that are really happening in the network, of the I would say the requests that you're having from your customers, you are able to close the loop. If you yesterday have, 2,000 calls for a particular service, you are able to detect that. And you are able to take action. You are able to close the loop and react immediately on what is really happening. So the number of use cases that we're seeing right now, productive, is huge. Right now, AI is in our systems. Then we're having additional ones that, we are having right now in Microsoft 1,700 algorithms already implemented in our product platform. So you can start checking algorithms and construct that on data and use them for several different functions of planning, to do the planning, but not also that operating the network is complex. It's having a lot of human effort, time, a lot of resources that you need to put on that. And right now you are able to detect anomalies, you are able to be really proactive rather than reactive. Okay? So that's also important.
So I think this brings up an interesting question. I mean, Elena, maybe this goes over to you from an Ericsson perspective, but I'm guessing everyone has a view. I mean, it's interesting when you talk, Andres, about what we can do in terms of agents, right? And what we can do in terms of maybe improving networks. I come back to this concept, and I know we're not the first people to talk about this, AI for networks versus networks for AI. And I think a lot of people know sort of what that means, but the way I think about that is that we can use AI to improve our networks, right? Energy efficiency, right? Operational improvements. At the same time, if we think about this future of multiple agents, right, operating on behalf, we're going to need networks that actually support that well, right? I mean, you can think about a future when much of the traffic on the networks is actually being run by, I mean, it could be agents, it could be AI processes running over those networks that aren't attached to people in some way, but we need networks that can support those with different layers of, different layers of reliability, different layers of security. Is that fair? I mean, how do you see that? Obviously, from an Ericsson perspective, delivering those networks, is that which is more important? Is that a right dynamic? Is that something that operators are thinking about? Or is this just something that I think is a cool concept to think about, but doesn't really matter?
It's very cool, and as you frame it, it's very complex. But it's not more complex than we, as a telco industry, we are an enterprise kind of. Every telco operator is an enterprise, and we have a lot of AI loads. We execute them on top of telecom infrastructure. We offer industries a possibility to execute their AI workloads on top of our telecom infrastructure. So there is obviously, we used to say, 5G is a world's biggest innovation platform. You can build your services. When you add the AI layer on top of it, then you have even more advanced, very cool innovation platform. The way you frame it, Peter, is if we attach an AI load to individuals, and then it goes not only for enterprises but also for consumers. That's even more exciting picture of the future. I don't think we're there, but because normally when I think of AI loads, telco for AI, I think about enterprise because it's just there. It's already there.
Yep.
For individuals, of course. To my perspective, I think both are equally important. We need to, it goes hand in hand, because offering a very good AI infrastructure without the capability of transferring these AI loads, without having very good underlying telecom network, it doesn't really work.
Do you see your customers understand? Because I do feel like that's a not talked about enough value that telcos can play, right? That unless the telcos can deliver that, much of AI falls over. And I don't know that that's always seems to be appreciated, or is that fully appreciated?
I think in your introduction when you show the answers to this question, what is very important for us to have in place in case to be successful with AI, they said edge, right? And that means that they recognize the importance of the underlying network for AI, right? Because you cannot have edge without connectivity.
From a compute standpoint, silicon perspective, are you seeing that? Are you seeing that focus?
Yeah, of course. Yes, I think the important thing when we look at the silicon, the important thing to consider here when you put together the architecture, when you come up with your what's going to be your hardware support there, you have to figure out the needs, the requirements, and where are you in the network, right? I wanna take us to, for example, again, something close to me, the RAN. When you look at the RAN and you're thinking about distributed units, you are very constrained from the performance per watt, from the power consumption. So you need to figure out what do you need there and what kind of AI processing you are going to be doing there. You're not going to, you look at a tower, you're not going to be doing there at the bottom of the tower. You're not going to be doing training there. So you don't need a GPU there, right? And I love GPU, but you don't need a GPU there. But what you can do is to, for example, having a CPU, general purpose processor, Xeon for sure, like we have that have built-in AI acceleration where, right now you can do anything you want to do, you can do it there. And you use that. Now, if you're going to do training, you don't need anything else, and you simplify your deployment. Now, if you're going to do training in the data center, then yes, then you want to have there a more powerful GPU. The other thing is and you were talking about the chat GPT of the world. The other thing is there is a place, obviously, in the network for LLMs, for large language models, and they can be very powerful for the network, for certain aspects of the network and network configuration and training. And again, back in the data center or back in the centralized unit. But you also have to look in the smaller models that you can run in different locations of the network, right? You don't need, again, I'm going back to the RAN. If you're going to the RAN, you don't need to process the whole Wikipedia data, right? There's going to be a lot of zero weights on that. So we have to look at the problem from the right angle and use the right tools for it.
And maybe let's dig into that a little bit. I like this concept of edge and what's important at the edge, and especially around small language models, I think is important. In part because if you're trying to sound smart on AI, I mean, you talk about small language models, people are like, what? I've heard of large language models. It makes you seem like you know a little bit more than wait, what's a small language model? Did you just make that up? It's people. But when I went back and I talked to some operators about our findings last year around edge and what operators thought about building out edge for AI, it's like, yeah, totally makes sense, right? Low latency applications, right? And then I talked to a large cloud provider, not Microsoft. So it's one of the others. They're like, that's just insane. Like what AI workloads need that much latency, and where are you going to find the power? Like what edge have the power, the power just availability or the space to deploy some of these things? And it was sort of like clearly that's crazy, but there's somewhere in between, right? When you talk about SLMs, when you think about the edge being the user device, we know the stuff that Qualcomm is doing around on-device AI. So, I mean, how should we think about what are the real use cases where you would need AI at the edge? And you seem to have some thoughts there, Joel, or at least you were jumping in on something.
Well, so first of all, the silicon availability and deployment is an indicator of where's deployed, where you have services, where they're deployed, where they're being used. Today, what you see primarily are training and inference infrastructure in the hyperscaler environment, right? That's by far the deployment environment. There's really nothing AI at the edge other than what is happening in a little bit of RAN optimization and what is happening a little bit in security. So we are selling processors that have NPUs, GPUs inside, and firewall vendors are using that to try to do some anomaly detection and improve. So we do some of these. We do see some of these services creeping toward the edge. But most of the infrastructure is sitting today in the data center. When you look at the inference at the edge, it's first of all, it comes from the desire of the telco ecosystem to participate in the delivery of services between the consumer, where you might have some capabilities, some AI capabilities on the device, and the cloud provider, who has a lot of AI capabilities, but they're further away. Right, so the inference at the data center at the telco edge allows you to have more capable device than what you have on the handset, but it also allows you to cut on the round trip delay to the cloud. What exactly are these services? So far, there are none.
So I guess, but part of that, maybe Andres, this is one for you, is how do we think about, if we think about a future where you've got these workloads that some of which you might want to do at the edge for security purposes, reliability purposes, right? I heard a great use case earlier today of a retail outlet that may be doing AI on-prem, right? And maybe they need to keep that on-prem for security purposes or for reliability purposes if their connection breaks down. But you can imagine that you're going to need to be doing some sort of hybrid workload management where some of those AI workloads, either part of the workload is done in the cloud, part at the edge, somewhere in between. That feels really complex. Do we feel comfortable in terms of managing that distributed workload? How do you feel about that from a Microsoft perspective?
This is the challenge. You're talking about the complexity of constructing networks and environments for AI. And then I'm talking about the networks for AI, the long-term solution, basically for what the customer needs and what the operators needs to deliver. And let me tell you about the requirements that we think, the challenges that we're thinking about. Security and governance this is one of the first one. For the hybrid approach, you need to have governance, access, authentication, these kind of things that are going to access all your information. You need to have infrastructure. I was talking about the on-premise, the edge, the terminal that are going to be able to use AI, your PCs, tablets, whatever you're using, and also network. I'm talking about the centralized data centers on the distributed solutions that you're having. Then you're talking about data platform itself, because you cannot have several data platforms. It's going to be very costly. It's going to be inefficient. It's going to be really difficult to handle. So you need to have a centralized approach. It doesn't matter if the information is distributed, it's located in this database or this database. You're having a centralized approach on how you control your data. Then you need to have AI toolkits. Okay, so you need to have catalogs of AI algorithms that you can use in certain moments, in certain purposes. We were talking about SLMs, we were talking about LLMs. It depends on the scenario. There is no good and bad here. It depends on the purpose of what you need to deliver. It depends on the capacity that you have for CPU. It depends on all of that, okay? You need to have AI-enabled functions, okay? So your systems, your BSS, OSS, all your functions, they need to have the capabilities, the open APIs, to have ingress or egress of data, because you need to have all the way to handle the information, okay? And then you have, of course, all the cultural changes, all the training, the skilling, and all of that. So when you talk about what our methodology, what we are seeing is all that. We are working right now in generating this awareness with our customers on what are the things, the pillars that we need to work basically to construct the whole scenario. And I know this is going to take time. AI is not a picture. AI is a transformation of how we are doing things. And this is going to take years. This is going to take years because we have debt on the obsolescence. We have a lot of things to do, but we are working on that.
Well, I think it goes back to the point we heard just before, where you just need to pick your use cases and begin, because until you begin and figure the stuff out, you're not going to know what you don't know. Exactly. I mean, so we've got about 5 minutes left, and I had some quick fire questions here, and I promise I'll keep them till the end so we can keep things on time. But I guess I'll skip this first one I had, is AI overhyped, because I'm sure you're all going to have to say no, because and it's really hard to know. But here's, I guess, a question I've been struggling with. How long do we think it will be until we see a negative impact from AI in I mean, every day you see some sort of network outage somewhere or some sort of data breach, which just happens across the globe. How long until we think something will be AI related that will negatively impact the reputation of AI in a telco network? Andres, I mean, do you think this year, next year?
What I can tell you is that we're working basically on these foundations to minimize the risk, take all these risks, and we are going to see that in the future.
So when it does happen, it won't be Microsoft's fault. That's what we heard. Joel, when's it going to hit the news?
So the question in my mind is, have we already experienced an AI failure? And the answer is probably yes.
It just hasn't been labeled as such.
That's right. So I think it's already there. But I think the biggest problem, and I think the previous speaker said that what AI enables you is that your employees have to think less. Right there is a problem.
That's a little bit less thinking. Elena, what do you think?
So we will see them. I think I agree with the previous speakers. I think we'll see them after the regulations will force us to report that it was AI the hook that caused the problem, right? We've seen them already.
That makes sense. That's a trigger. Christina?
But see, I don't see it that negative.
Good,
right?
good. I was worried you would just say yes to whatever.
No, I think nobody's going to go and no operator is going to go and, switch, click the switch and put everything on AI. They know what they're doing. It's going to be, and again, we're just scratching the surface now. It's going to be a process. We're going to learn more. We're going to take one use case, make sure it really works, isolated, then we're going to put it on a bigger environment and then make sure that it works. There are multiple tools, lab, digital twins. There are plenty of things to be done to mitigate the risk. Is there going to be one day a problem? There is always, every time you try to do something complex. And what we do is inherently, even if we don't do AI, what we're doing is pretty amazing and pretty complex already. So there's always going to be, there's going to be a learning process. But I don't expect any disaster coming out of it at all. It will be a learning and it will be done in a responsible way.
Well, I think we should try to end on a positive note. And I think that is the perfect positive note to end on. So thank you all. Can we get a round of applause for the panelists?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all very much. With that, we will now have our second keynote. So we've got, and I've got the clicker again. It's my job to do that. With that, we have, I'm sure most of you, if you're on LinkedIn or you've been in the industry, know Jeff and have seen some of his thoughts. So we're really excited to have Jeff Hollingworth here from Rakuten Symphony to give the second keynote. Jeff, over to you.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm going to ask a question. You're going to have to engage for 2 minutes. So you're going to have to stop typing on your phones at least for 2 minutes. Hands up here, who flew here for this conference? And keep your hands up. Keep your hand up if you are a member of a loyalty program. And keep your hand up if that loyalty program affected who you flew with. We'll come back to that. That might not feel related, but I'll explain. This presentation is going to be a little bit different because what I want to try and give you is some new mental models and new ways to frame AI that I feel are important so we can get inside the fundamentals. Because if we can't do that, I'm not sure we'll understand what we're actually doing here. I'm also going to focus on new AI, generative AI, because that's the thing that is changing how we're perceiving AI. Traditional AI has been around since 1956. I believe telecom is one of the most advanced industries in adopting modeling, because that's how our radio networks work, and it's sampling and it's stochastic, it's probabilistic, and that's what traditional AI is. The large language model is slightly different. And this was a colleague who tried to understand what my slides actually meant. So he lobbed it into a ChatGTP, I think, to try and get an explanation. And the language that came back didn't really help him. And then ChatGTP actually offered to visualize it for him. And this is what it came out with. If you only remember one thing from today, I want to give you the one thing. AI, or generative AI, is the industrialization of creativity. And that's why it feels a bit freaky. And through this presentation, we'll speak about what that means and why that's important. But we inherently believe as humans that creativity is something that we own. It's not in the hearts of machines. But in reality, I think what we're finding is we're not as creative as we thought. 95% of what we do is actually unoriginal thought. It's very rare you meet original thought. And you know that because you know the people that come up with original thought. It tends to be an Einstein, an Aristotle. It's somebody that just doesn't obey the rules. And that is slightly uncomfortable for us in professional roles. For myself, for example, in marketing, where we believe that we're really creative people. But in reality, this tooling is making a massive difference to those processes. The other industry that's interesting, legal, massively creative industry. It makes business dance. Really, legal is the processing of massive amounts of regulation and documentation to see what you can do. Humans aren't very good at that. These new machines are very good at that. So where I used to write a simple marketing contract and maybe outsource that for $200 and maybe go backwards and forwards and take a week, I can now start to just generate that on demand, and it's pretty good. So here's the agenda. We'll start by destroying the magic. We'll go through 4 examples that actually is in the summary of this session. And then we'll just come back, just in case you forgot the magic was destroyed, we'll come back and remind you that the magic's destroyed at the end. I'd hate you to leave here believing there's magic. That would be awful. You can call me anti-Disney. And then the perspective I want to give, I work for Rakuten, specifically the telecom part, Rakuten Symphony. But Rakuten is not actually a telco business. It's a techco doing a telco business. And it does about 70 plus businesses where it's gone in, reinvented the experience, the efficiency, and dominated them. And the reason I asked you around behavior and membership points, really we're in the business of affecting behavior to maximize business. Rakuten does that through a loyalty program. It's the biggest loyalty program in Japan. So when you look at how this tooling works, it shouldn't fundamentally change anything we're doing from a strategy business point of view at all. If it does, it means you weren't doing the right things before. What it should do is help you do them better, more efficiently, faster, and scale. The other thing that's going to be a little bit different, I could give you hundreds of examples of the magic of AI, the reductions in cost, the genius, the spread. I can also give you hundreds of examples of why only a lunatic would deploy this technology and how dangerous this technology is and what we need to do to protect ourselves. I don't think either of those questions are very interesting because it fundamentally just defines what snake oil I'm trying to sell you. What I want to try and get to is fundamentally what this technology means to us and how it works. Because then we can decide how we want to use it, and then we can decide if we want to use it for good or bad. All technology is neutral. It's what you choose to do with it. You'll have the guns don't kill argument. It's exactly the same. The reason the world has weaponized around guns is they have a longer reach than knives and they have a bigger distribution. And then you can use it for good or bad, and that tends to be subjective. And then this is a narrative I use in all technology presentations. I didn't bother regenerating this. This is the one I used for APIs. Especially in our industry, we are praying there's a magic unicorn that's going to turn up that we can point to, that's going to save us from the world we're living in and birth us into a beautiful rainbow unicorny world. The only difference with AI and APIs is that you remove the piss out of it. You can remember that as well. That could be the second thing you remember. The second reason I want to go down this path is that we attach almost mythical belief to technology if we don't understand it. That's what we do as humans. We've done it since the beginning of time. It's not that long ago that people used to pray in the morning to make sure the sun came up and sacrifice their children and other things to make sure the sun came up because they didn't really understand how the sun worked. It's really important to understand how this technology works, because otherwise you make really bad decisions because you don't know what is good, what is bad. And this is then the very simple explanation of destroying the magic from generative AI. Because at the heart of it, it's incredibly mechanical, but delivers a genius level of output. All it ever does is decide what is the next XXX most likely going to be in this sentence. But the reason it's turned up now is because a company called OpenAI ingested the world's content that was available in an easily digestible way for the first time because of the internet, which was available because of all of the telecom networks, and we daisy chain all the way up. And it's bizarrely good. It's freakily good. And the billions of choices that go into this make it feel like it's human. But it's not. Because it's not working how we do. It's consumed every piece of knowledge on the planet, and then it's working out the probability of what word comes next. It's not reasoning. It's brute forcing reasoning. We don't work that way. We actually work out reasoning and then apply it to a very small data set and knowledge. And if you want to get inside where AI is going, now people are trying to understand how to instrument reasoning, not brute forcing reasoning. And what do you get to? You get to an energy consumption level that's much more like a human brain than what we're doing today. This is day zero. I heard that from Christina, I think, the lady from Intel. It's day zero of what we're doing. That's why it's so important to understand. But if you think this isn't true and we are really creative, start putting things in like create a vampire story that doesn't exist. It's incredibly good. It's humanistic in its quality. And fundamentally what that means is that we're creating a world of zero marginal cost on creativity. And creativity is just about everything humans do. And it's not marketing creativity, it's legal creativity, it's HR creativity, it's any place there is a piece of paper that actually allows humans to go into a process to work together. That can actually get consumed in a really effective way and regurgitated out, and you apply a temperature of 0, which removes creativity, and it's pretty consistent. So let's go through the 4 examples that was on the agenda without really using examples except for one. When we're looking at the application of this technology inside our business, we have to decide if we're looking at it from a perspective of what we deliver and the technology, and then working out what experience and customer we can deliver to, or are we starting with the customer and the experience and working out how to deliver it? For me, this is the fundamental difference between a, quote, techco and a telco. Because a techco doesn't start with capability. A Telco starts with understanding how it wants to change the existing world to be a better world, both for the customers and for themselves. And then they understand how the technology comes in. That's why for an internet company, AI is not anything new. AI is just oxygen into an existing fire of a data-driven organization that allows them to do things they couldn't do before. I think we are doing really well in terms of technology and delivery, because that's constrained and we can look at our operations and we can adopt, and all of that is required for the top part. But the hard bit we're struggling with in telecom is that we have to find growth. Growth will actually accelerate us out of where we are, and then suddenly every technology will start to make sense. And as Peter said, 5G will have a reach that is absolutely needed, and we'll go on and on and on. But until we get that growth understanding, it's going to be hard. Use cases versus ROI, as I say, all of these statistics that we get. The fundamental question that we have to ask ourselves is, do we buy versus do? This is actually no different from any other technology adoption, cloud, for example. Now, let me give you some statistics that by 2033, people believe that telecom, just on software and services, will be spending about $24 billion. In 2022, about 7% of the workforce was working with AI. Already now, about 20% claim to be working with AI. But the CAGR is 30%. Each year, we're going to spend more on AI, quote AI. So where are we getting that money from to actually pay for everything that we're doing? So we're starting almost in a hole before we've started. And I'll tell you, I mean, there's vendor communities out there that are building organizations that love those projections of the spend and will promise a lot of things on the top. Be careful that you actually understand what you believe the top looks like and what you believe you need to buy. There's a famous Rudyard Kipling quote, "In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king." It doesn't take much to understand this. Understand this. Then you can start to understand if you're overpaying, underpaying, and you control your AI future. Sustainability, this is my, just turn the lights off for goodness sake. So, in a lot of what we do in telecom, we're in a great place because we are sustaining a really kind of large cost structure. We've not optimized very much up to about 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. Our networks are on 100% of the time, 24/7, if no one's using them or if they are. Because it was almost impossible to be able to turn them off if nobody's in the room. And the really harder part is just to turn them on before people notice they weren't off. The scale that we work at is so large that when you start running these models with the data that allow you a granularity and a precision to manage at the core level, at the sector level, at the antenna level, that suddenly it's amazing how much power we will reduce. And we only have to reduce 1% to make massive differences continuously. What this requires, and the biggest problem with AI that we haven't discussed yet, I'm sure you're all aware, is AI is as good as the data that you actually have to use it. So good AI uses good data, which means that you can trust the data, but the data is where you need it in those time windows to actually do this. So one neat mental model, just to keep remembering this, is just view every single antenna in your network as a light bulb and ask, should I keep that light bulb on or not? And how quickly can I turn it on or off? And the people who get that down to the millisecond level will see cost reductions in energy, which will go into sustainability reporting like a positive that we haven't seen before. This is good. This is Airtel launched a service last week. This is the only example I have in this presentation. They've launched an AI-powered service to reduce spam. Because as I said previously, this technology is really powerful and it can be used for good and it can be used for evil. And the people who understand evil are really good. The speed they are moving. If you have not had a personalized phishing attack yet, then just wait. And we here think we're really educated. When you get one that's really good, that's in that window of emotion, and you click, it's amazing how sophisticated they are. They used to have to do 1 million of the same to find one person. Now they're doing 1 million of different ones that are all for us individually. Because what have they got? They've got zero cost, zero marginal cost on creativity to do that. And they are incredibly creative. This is really good because it helps the customer. But the other part it starts to suggest is changing the promise, the customer promise of Airtel. So suddenly, Airtel has a choice now not to just sell connectivity, it's selling safety. How much will you pay for safety? That's not a unit, that's not a gigabyte of safety. We're living in a world of an aging population, and the elder population are living online and they don't understand this at all, and they will get exploited. So people want to keep those people safe. We have a huge opportunity in telecom to actually address populations in very unique ways and give them something that's more valuable than connectivity. But until we do this, it doesn't really matter. The acquisition numbers will improve them slightly, but it's still a bit like picking grain up off a floor. I think we really need to start thinking about what the promise is that we want to deliver and escape from the technology we're trying to sell. So just to come back in closing, just in case we forgot, this isn't magical. This is just the next software algorithm where the complexity is actually moved out of the code and it's moved into data sets. So the skill is in actually curating, managing, keeping data sets safe. It shouldn't change what you're doing because you're in the business of running a business that gives a promise and you have to deliver it as efficiently as possible. What it does do is allow you to do it in a very different timescale, cost structure, and performance way. Don't hurry, but be quick. Meaning, don't try and jump on a unicorn and fly away. This is a grind. This is a grind for the next 10 years. The people that will win are the ones that start learning to swim now and get very good at swimming. And so until you jump in, it's a bit, you're going to understand what other people tell you, and I really recommend you understand for yourselves. And then in closing, this is me on the left, by the way, because I feel really good. I've just given this like cracking PowerPoint presentation, and my job is done. And like, you know, I'll go out literally after I've finished here, I am going to go and get a drink. I haven't done anything materially because I haven't actually, in this last half hour, moved anything in terms of real learning, real knowledge, hands-on. That's another difference in culture and mindset. My hope would be that we we really get into a mode as an industry where we are sharing how to do things, not what you should do as a unicorn answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeff. It's interesting. Before I head on to the next panel, I was talking with Jeff earlier, and hopefully we all have examples of sort of the just do mentality. But I was sharing an example with him. In my team, as I mentioned, I've got a team of analysts where we're trying to pull together some good insights and challenge them to start thinking about how we use, as a business, how we use AI. And we're always thinking we're behind, right? We're not doing enough. And there's a guy on my team that has taken the lead with that. And he's like saying, yeah, like, we're not moving quick enough. We can't get the internal approvals to do things, but we're playing with some stuff. And he went to a conference, smaller conference. And I mean, you guys are at a conference, you know how that works. There's people trying to sell you stuff. And he came away from it saying, it's amazing. I was talking to the other people in a position like we are, and they were asking questions about what we were doing. And I explained some of the tiny trials and the troubles we've had. And they said, you're really so far ahead. He's like, but we haven't done anything. He's like, yeah, but you're asking the right questions, and you know what you need to know, and you're thinking about where your data is and what you want to do with it and what models to use. And he's like, we haven't even gone that far. And I joked with him. I said, that's because we started playing with it. Right? Until you started playing with it, you wouldn't have actually known those questions. And it kind of goes to Jeff's point, but it also leads into our next panel, which is how telcos can actually help on the there's another one for that's Jeff's slide. For how telcos can actually help the B2B market, how they can help enterprise customers with AI to roll out AI. And with that, let me bring up the next panel. If everyone can come on up, we can have a good conversation. But what I will do then is we will just go down the row, and we'll do what we did the first time, is with a quick introduction and what you do and where you're coming to this angle from. So please.
Hi, I'm Matthew Rajan. I'm VP of Business Development with Infobip, and my main job is actually handling the telco.
Uh-oh.
Hi. Okay. Better now. So, Matthew Rajan, I'm VP of Business Development with Infobip, and I'm actually heading a division that does different kinds of sales towards telcos. But that division is actually called Operator Partnership, which embeds that we're actually trying to do some kind of partnership with the telcos rather than just sell them something.
Hi, so I'm Pranay Bajpai. I am the VP for Digital and Assisted Experiences in the Verizon Consumer Group.
Hello, I am Samantha Kite, and I head up industry security at the GSMA and Peter's colleague.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Walt Shaw, leader for product management at Boingo. So Boingo is a neutral host service provider for enterprises. So we work very closely with enterprises to manage their public cellular as a neutral host, but also layer in Wi-Fi, IoT, and edge computing. Thanks.
Anyone is taking the monorail. The Boingo station is the closest to the convention.
That's right.
I was on the monorail the other day, and someone said it is a better deal than taking the high roller.
$13 for a 24-hour pass.
So, I think basic question here again that we'd like to dig into here is a bit of how telcos are using or can use AI to support their aspirations. I mean, 5G was supposed to be the big promise. We know that hasn't really happened. Do we think, are we comfortable thinking AI can help on that? Is AI a tool for operators to help actually generate some revenue from the enterprise? Is it AI with 5G? Anyone? I'm open. I mean, maybe. From your perspective, Renee,
No, you're right. So, I mean, about 8 or 10 years back, we got into 5G. We were early adopters of the technologies. But when our CEO talked about 8 currencies of 5G that we're coming out with new ideas, we really tapped into like what all we can monetize in that space. And enterprise was one big bet that we placed on it. And to a certain extent, yes, it has not materialized to the level that we would have expected. It has, but the pace has not been to what we would have loved to. AI definitely acts as an accelerator in that whole scheme. We are seeing use cases that are tiling up now, especially in healthcare and spaces that where we have been implementing AI experiences on top of our 5G experiences, and that's where we are seeing a lot of value coming up. So yes, AI is definite accelerator for.
Yeah, I think for us, we're in a unique position because we engage with the enterprise as a neutral host provider. So we come in and work with all the carriers, bring them in on board, rolling out DAS and public cellular. But we also understand what are some of those use cases that the enterprises have. And in many instances, those use cases may be connected, may be wired, or they may be on Wi-Fi, for example. And then we, try to understand sort of the material impact or the monetary impact of those use cases, and then figure out which ones would ideally move into 5G, or in this case, private 5G. So we have seen using AI and just iteration with customers, for example, where, point of sales that were initially wired, they're increasingly mobile now because they want to capture that point of sales where the customers are rather than the customers coming to the point of sales. And then understanding that many of those transactions, because they were on technology that were maybe necessarily not efficient, or they were prone to latency, they were actually losing sales. So in those instances, we were able to move them to 5G or private LTE, private 5G, to really capture those sales. So point of sales transactions went up, queue times went down, and everyone's happier. So that's a good example of using 5G and AI to find new monetization opportunities.
So I think, and that's really straightforward. I think from an infobit perspective, people might not sort of see that telco enterprise connection, but ultimately through the CTOs that we do, enabling stuff like that, we're really making that connection to the enterprise. Is that a fair way to look at it? How is AI sort of fitting into some of the way that you make that connection?
Well, yeah. So when we are talking about what Infobip does and what the whole CPaaS industry does, is in a way monetization of the telco, not just telco, but also telco assets that they have. So I would like to say that we are quite good at monetizing what those guys have. So that's one thing, and that's what we are doing for. Basically, yes, monetizing communication channel in different ways, different use cases, different things. And obviously, if you can add some kind of AI layer, which obviously we did, on top of that, you can create much better, let's say, use cases, and you can actually develop it much quicker. What is even, more interesting, once you do something like that, for example, what we are doing is we are creating different types of chatbots. Those chatbots are conversational chatbots where you're actually communicating with the audience, with some kind of subscriber base. If those chatbots are done in a proper way, they're basically generating more traffic for you, more business for us. I mean, more monetization in a way. And on the other side, it's actually reducing costs because you don't need to have a live agents to support that. So we have actually done quite a few deployments like that, where we have seen approximately 90% of all the requests are being actually realized already on the AI layer. Just 10% went to the live agent. And even that live agent had an AI, let's say, copilot, which would help them answer the question. So in the end, again, AI is answering those questions. So basically, this is what we do and how we're actually monetizing it.
a secondary effect of helping the telco by leveraging networks to support the enterprise needs in terms of solving customer
Yeah, and what is interesting, we started with, let's say, with text, with some kind of chat, but now we came to the position where we can do it also through voice. So it's a voice-generated bots, and it's actually it sounds a bit spooky, to be completely honest. You can actually talk to the bot.
So, Sam, we're going to talk a bit about security in a bit, but are you seeing this obviously we all work with operators on a regular basis. We just came back from Seoul, from the APEC region, where there's a lot of stuff going on. But generally the operators that you see, are you seeing this connection between what they're doing and what they want to do with enterprises and AI?
Yeah, I think there's definite use cases which seem quite obvious. So I think the example Jeff gave earlier around spam and fraud, that is something that we're seeing probably across the board. And then other use cases around security operations center and trying to optimize the use of AI there as well. So it's definitely being used, just maybe in more of a BAU sort of way rather than, yeah.
Well, I guess to answer your question, you're at BAU. You talked about spam and fraud. Is it fair to say that that's an early sort of BAU example because the ROI is easy to calculate? I was using this example earlier, right? If you look at in a different space, if you look at the work that's going on with API exposure, if you look at gateway work, and thank you all for being here at that big DevCon that's taking place right now. It's boring. You guys are in the right place. But if you look at the initial APIs that are being commercialized by operators, it's identity, it's location support of identity, it's everything kind of related around fraud, in part because it feels like there's a simple ROI around it, right? As opposed to someone jumps on the phone and talks to customer service for an hour because they can't get their credit card to work while they're traveling, because they were in Seoul last week and they were home in London and now they're here. They take an hour of customer service time as opposed to an API call which says, yes, Sam is in. Sam's phone is in Las Vegas, let's let them call. It seems like it's a fairly easy ROI. Is that what drives these decisions?
I actually think sometimes the use cases are a little bit simpler. Yeah, and a little bit, there is that. There's definitely that. There's, even with fraud, you're always playing a bit of whack-a-mole, aren't you? So you might solve the issue on one side and then it pops up somewhere else. But I think the use cases that are a little bit more straightforward. I think within security and cybersecurity, it's always an issue around data, where the challenges are around the data within other use cases. But that one is probably a more obvious one. Plus, we have a lot more data around fraud than, maybe a cyber attack.
What do we see? One of the things I talked about this morning, because some of the research that I was focused on early, part of it, I didn't go into a lot of it, but we do a lot of work with enterprises as well. I think trying to understand the enterprise side of how telecos can help and where AI fits in. We just completed a big survey of 4,200 enterprises around the world. If you were in the session earlier this morning, thank you. But one of the big findings that comes out of that, not too revolutionary, is that every vertical is different, right? And that you sort of can't treat them all in the same way and assume that what matters for retail is the same thing matters for fintech. So on this front, how are we seeing telcos working with verticals? Are there some that are appearing better prospects, some that there's no opportunity for? Pranay, do you see anything?
Yeah, so we have some parallels in certain verticals where we apply them very closely to us. Like my own example, where I work very closely on the digital assets on Verizon side, and I'm constantly kind of facing what you're saying, the cyber attacks, the fraud events happening. And we have formalized certain approaches that we could now apply with AI applied on it as something that could productize. And so now we are talking to our partners in our enterprise side, similar verticals like in healthcare, like in finance industries, who are also seeing almost identical set of problems. So what we're able to do is take that productized version of our own AI applications for the digital and kind of put it in front of our vertical partners and saying, could you take something like this and that apply on your side? And that's showing good results for us because that have started, especially in fintech, we're seeing a lot of good dialogue starting there.
I would add on to that. There's an opportunity for enterprises to digitize those use cases, that first and foremost, right? To create that data lake of use cases and then tie those use cases to the monetization piece, the ROI, and then I think the previous keynote, let AI do the creativity part and figure out what are the new use cases that ties in the ROI plus the connectivity options, right? In our case, it would be 5G, and then create those new use cases that enterprises can monetize on. A lot of the AI use cases right now are about cost savings, such as fraud.
Are you seeing some enterprises and verticals be better prepared? I mean, one of the things, it was interesting, one of the things that Jeff called out, which I think seems, when he said it seems very obvious, right? Make sure your data, you've got clean data, you know where your data is, you've got that solved, right? I mean, you can also do things, right? But I've been in conversations with enterprises and with operators, and they say the exact opposite. Right? No, AI is great because AI is going to find my data for me. And AI is going to clean it up for me, and I don't need to have it. I mean, AI is going to find it all and do that all for me. And you start to see, oh, you're right, you're wrong. I mean, are you seeing some telcos who are probably better prepared for this, and telcos can come in, or are they all sort of the same place?
I mean, it's really where the open APIs are, and they tend to be in areas of security, fraud, the cost savings. Until those APIs get to more on the other areas of the business, I think that piece, yeah.
If I can add to that, I'm not sure if you remember, there was a saying like maybe 20, 30 years ago that IT solves problems that you didn't have before IT. And I think now we are getting to the same position with AI. So AI is actually solving some problems that were maybe even created by AI. But on the open API thing, I actually have a comment. What we have created with open API, and it's again connected with AI in the end, is that we actually have a solution. Just we don't have a problem. That's the problem with. So we have 5G networks. We have huge capabilities. We have APIs that can do all kinds of stuff, and we have put that on the market. Just the problem is that people don't know. Okay, what now? What we want to do with this? So now we are trying to mix up AI with that to add additional flavor of some even better solution. But again, what is missing is the problem.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's not an uncommon scenario for telcos, right? Of problems looking for solutions. I mean, I guess the one thing that we can all probably agree on is that we're not making up sort of issues around security, right? We see that on the API front, we see that on the broad. And Sam, obviously you focus a lot on security. It is your job to actually look at that. I mean, I guess going back to a bit of what Jeff said, right, in terms of how AI makes a lot of threats easier to generate. And the flip side, I think we can talk about how AI can solve some of those issues. I mean, how are you seeing that from an operating perspective? Is that something they can monetize with supporting their customers? The example that Jeff gave, right, was this Airtel supporting its customers. Can we think about this as a way that a telco can use this to help with their enterprise businesses, to help their enterprises maybe support their customers? I mean, how do you see that perspective?
I think the answer is always yes. It's just a matter of, again, coming down to the use cases and what their priorities are. It's within security, it's quite a challenge to monetize much, just because you're always trying to fight fires. So with the telcos that we're dealing with, they're definitely leveraging AI. They've been using it for quite a while. And I quite liked the image you had of the three circles. What was it? Core AI, machine learning, and generative AI. So machine learning, as Jeff mentioned, it's been used for many, many years by telcos. It's nothing new. So when we talk about AI, a lot of it is more about, look, what are these new use cases? Like we've mentioned, fraud is very tangible, but within the security operations centers, we're seeing a lot of use cases to not just maybe to spot anomalies, but also across the supply chain, to assess sort of, all the different vendors they're using and the third party and the risks associated. And so there's a lot of different things that they could be doing within those operation centers, which they are leveraging. Whether they've decided to monetize that, I've not yet seen it within the operators. However, there's of course an opportunity for that.
Is monetizing security at a very basic level difficult because you would essentially be saying would you like to pay more for a more secure connection or not pay more and be okay with less secure? That would seem like a hard value prop.
We need to be secure. I think it's just a matter, again, of priorities. I feel as though I thought I was going to be really cynical, but I actually thought Jeff had put it in sort of the right frame for us to be looking at AI. It is a new technology, but it's within the security world. It's very much addressed in the same way. We're doing secure by design, zero trust. And so those principles don't change no matter what the new technology is. And I think it's just a matter of the operators making a conscious decision to monetize certain use cases where they can. And Bharti Airtel is such a great example of that, really.
I actually think that, if you're talking about telcos in particular, about security, then this is also, let's say, part of that is done by my company as well. So we are quite involved into that as well. So if we are talking about security, let's say you cannot monetize it. You actually even losing money on that. Losing money in a sense that there are, different frauds that, some of the telcos actually benefit from those frauds. I mean, we don't want to have frauds, but, we are generating more calls, we are generating more texts, we are generating all kinds of stuff. And in the end, telcos are benefiting from that. So if you, let's say, try to monetize it and you block them, you're actually losing that money, which is definitely good, logical, and morally right, but you're actually losing the money. That's my comment on that. And then there is a second part where we can actually use AI, and it's very good and important because, there is a huge quantity of data being processed by telcos on each day, each second, each minute. And the only way to process this in a proper way is to use some kind of AI. You cannot do it manually, obviously. But the problem is now that once we are trying to process all those data, then we are having problems with regulation, privacy, and all this kind of stuff. So, you need to, find a fine balance between privacy and actually protecting your customer. And I'm not sure how to resolve it, to be completely.
There's obviously some moral hazard there in terms of reducing fraud to zero versus network traffic. But for the record, we should try to do, for the record, we're all agreed here that fraud is
Definitely.
So, I'm going to go back to a bit of this part of the question I had on the first panel, this idea of AI for networks versus networks for AI. I mean, if we think about how operators can leverage AI to support their enterprise customers, is that really the most basic way? Delivering solid connectivity, delivering solutions that can be optimized and prioritized for supporting the AI workloads that their enterprises need. You guys obviously are delivering those networks, neutral host, private networks. Are you seeing them come to you and say, as you're developing that out, think about my future AI workloads? Are they already thinking about that, or is that the right way to think about it?
I think for us, it goes back to an early point you have, because we touch many customers in a particular vertical. I think a lot of customers are looking for best practices, and I think AI can uncover those insights, per vertical, because we're touching a lot of customers in a particular segment. So I think, to your question, you kind of need both. You need the networks for AI that ultimately the AI will come back and deliver back to those networks in many folds. But I think calling from that LLM from all these different customers in a particular vertical and honing in on best practices, I think is key.
No, I wouldn't.
You guys focus a lot, obviously, on quality. It's interesting, I will say, from the US to the UK, it was surprising because in the US, like the fights between all the operators, like who have the best network. You don't really see that in a lot of other markets, but you guys have to be pride yourself on that.
Yeah.
Are you getting enterprise customers or customers in general saying, hey, help me understand how I have the right connectivities of what they work with?
No, absolutely. And that's like one of the biggest inquiries we are getting as the AI boom goes on. I always feel like AI is built around three big ingredients or recipes, right? Everybody says data, compute, but actually connectivity is the one of the biggest pillars around building the right AI. And when we have that reliable network that something like Verizon can offer to connect all those IoT devices that are talking, the data that needs to connect amongst them to create that outcome that we need from the AI, I think networks are most important ingredient in that recipe. So we are seeing a lot of our customers actually inquire on how can we make operational industrial scale operations of our AI solutions using the connectivity that Verizon is about to offer. And then obviously your first part is true that AI for network is absolutely needed. We are generating tons and tons of data on our own network. In fact, we do our whole planning and build exercise and how we need to put cell sites, where we need to put cell sites, where they need to be sliced, where need to be a new tower. Everything is now driven out of our AI models rather than the old school traditional ways of doing things. So
with the first panel, I've got about 5 minutes left. I want to go to some lightning round questions and let the first folks off easily, but I'm a big meaner to you guys is AI right? Sam, you both scared to answer. so we're going to make you answer first to give everyone some time. I mean, there's no right answer. There's no wrong.
Am I going to be quoted on this? I have my AI colleague over here. I think it is a little bit, yeah. Yeah, I think the way that we approach it within security is definitely, as I mentioned, a bit more BAU, new technology. I think it's just a matter of assessing the risks and deciding sort of.
Before, and I think we all know people who work in telcos that their hackles maybe got up and were talking about GenAI. So like we've been doing this for years, just not necessarily GenAI. Renee, how about you?
Partly yes. But here's my thing. It has a lot of potential and there's no denying about it. What happened is this ChatGPT moment happened and everybody started thinking AI in this one lens of chatbots. And I think AI is far more and far broader than a chatbot rendering or a virtual assistant rendering. But what ended up happening is we are hyping around this one use case and then use case chasing this. So we need to take a step back, and especially in Verizon, we have taken this thing like a thoughtful AI. Operationalizing AI at scale shouldn't be driven just out of use case of putting a chatbot, but how can we use every part of our business and operationalize it, better it, and improve it for our employees, for our customers? And that's the right way to look at AI.
But were you here for my slides? I'm pretty sure I done it. I could not have done, and the 3 trees I'd probably killed by asking ChatGPT to generate that picture for me. How about you? What do you see? I mean, from an input perspective.
I will try to answer with a question. Do you think metaverse was overhyped?
I use it all the time.
You do. So I'm saying this because I remember a couple of years back on a conference like this, everybody was talking metaverse, this, metaverse, that, some huge numbers, some billions, trillions, whatever. And I was trying to calculate, okay, where they are getting those numbers? You know, I really don't see that happening. You know, to connect with the question, AI is definitely in a better place than Meta is in that sense. However, I would say it's maybe just too much PR because as Pranay said, ChatGPT, I would say, reached the, you know, how to say, the last person on the earth, basically. So everybody's using it for very, you know, small purposes, you know, like, you know, writing a homework, you know, getting some results for a football match or whatever, you know, some small things, but it's there and people know about it. AI and different types of AI have been developing for the last 10, 20 years and being using since, So it's nothing, let's say, new in that sense. BIU, But now we are, in a better place, but it is a bit overhyped, yeah.
I think AI has always been there, with machine learning and automation. I think it's different now because it's gone mainstream. But I think the cart is a little bit before the horse. So with more APIs and more discovery, I think, definitely the future is bright.
Well, I said I wanted to, we tried to end the first panel on a positive note. So I'm going to change this last question to one that you guys haven't seen, but the same, because I think I know from the conversation we had. So we all kind of agreed that AI might be a bit overhyped. So we talked a bit about how some of this is important, particularly, and I think you mentioned some of it, and I know that we're all going to work on the API part. If I go back to Jeff's slides, he didn't take the time to change his unicorn slide. So if I go to the APIs, do we think APIs are overhyped or underhyped? Well,
I think we're waiting for something different, right? I think that's the only thing that's available, the only framework available, but certainly something that scales would be heuristically better. Yeah.
Do we pay enough attention to them? Is AI sort of overshadowing some of the things that we might be able to do with other technologies like APIs, particularly tapping into networks?
I think potentially. Now that I've been so negative on AI, I'm like, maybe I need to defend it a little bit more. But I think there's potential with both technologies. It's just the way that we choose to, I guess, use it and prioritize it and implement it into our. I think the operators are using both in equal measure. I think what we see here at a conference may be slightly skewed, but I think from what I'm seeing from the telco perspective is it's sort of coming in equal measure.
So for me, it boils down to ROAPI or ROAI. Essentially, if these two things are working for me, they are working. And going back to what Walt just said, Mattia, I'm going to misspell that. We do have a moment here, which could be a metaverse or a cloud moment. When cloud was all over the place, we were like saying, hey, cloud's the fad, but it actually carried on. And it is actually the big thing happening. Metaverse, maybe not. AI is at that precipice moment where we can see it boiling into something very big, but it should definitely happen.
Mattia, I said I wanted to end on a positive note. It has not clearly been. I heard the discussion earlier. I was thinking more positive. Clearly, you guys have got some experience.
I am, and this is not a lie, I am the most optimistic person in my company. And people know me about that. So, in regards to APIs, I will try to, actually share a couple of comments on that one. I'm using this quite often for a comparison. So you are from Europe, right? So there is this PSD2 initiative for the open banking, which is basically an API for open banking, and I think that was deployed 5-6 years back. Since then, you can actually, in Europe at least, you can connect to any bank. You can build up your startup. You can connect to any bank, and you can actually start sending money, receiving money, doing different transactions, and people are actually doing it. For example, Revolut is one of the unicorns in that space, and obviously not the only one. So they made actually a success from the very dull old banking industry by just adding those APIs that you can actually do something through this. Why I'm saying this? Because now we are talking about network APIs where we actually having the same opportunity. We can build different use cases, different startups, which can connect and control that network and get something out of it. I'm not sure what. So there are different things that you can do, but there is still, a lot of brainstorming to be done. So whether you will be using for that AI or not doesn't matter. But APIs, I definitely think will be there, and they are a new world of opportunities for us if we use them properly, obviously.
Well, thank you for helping us another positive note I was looking for. We don't want to send people away depressed in Las Vegas as well. So thank you. Can we have a round of applause for the panel?
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone, as we all take our seats. I have one mic to this. Everyone has one. Great. Fantastic. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Janine Vos. I head up the SNG Accelerator at the GSMA, where I set up the AI for Impact initiative already quite a few years back, long before the hype that was going on earlier today. And so it's my pleasure to moderate this last panel. We'll delve deeper on the subject of AI on devices. So we'll cover some use cases, what's the value, also what are some limitations of on-device AI, and also think through what's the impact of neural networks. But first, I'd like the panelists to introduce themselves. Kenta, would you like to kick off?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Kenta Yasukawa. Good afternoon. I'm CTO and co-founder of a company Telecom. So a little bit about who we are. Probably the shortest description that works for this audience is we are an IoT-focused MVNO. We have worked with our telecom partners and provide eSIMs and SIMs for our customers who want to connect their devices to cloud backend. But we are not just an MVNO. We also have features or building blocks that make customers' IoT journey easier. Like, for example, creating a virtual private network for their devices and their servers. We can do that because we have a in-cloud software-based telecom core that is deployed on Amazon Web Services. So from device point of view, Next Hop is already cloud, and they can actually make use of cloud API and AI backend through these secure connections without going through the internet. So we are helping our customers to build IoT applications enabled by AI by using this infrastructure. So we are a connectivity provider plus those IoT enablement features.
Hello, everybody. So my name is Rowan Litter, and I come from VDC Research. We're a market analyst research firm based outside of Boston, Massachusetts. My practice is called Enterprise Mobility and the Connected Worker. And so we cover really any piece of technology that can be utilized by a frontline mobile worker, whether that be a public safety officer, first responder, utility worker, someone on the manufacturing, retail shop floor, you name it. And those technologies usually include the devices, the end user devices used by the frontline mobile workers, as well as the connectivity solutions and the mobile networks that enable these devices to connect and do everything that the worker needs to get the job done.
Hi, everyone. Brian Robertson. I'm head of industry strategy at the GSMA. AI is a big part of what we do within my remit and department. Some background is that I've got 25 years in the semiconductor business, and it's all of a sudden become, as you can imagine, very interesting for AI, from cloud down to device. And last week, for example, I spent a couple of days in Silicon Valley on a busman's holiday, I guess, visiting some of the key guys in the silicon market. And there's some really interesting insights, which hopefully maybe we can discuss in this session.
Perfect. Thanks very much, everyone. And so maybe to kick us off, when we think about AI on devices, we're thinking handsets, we're thinking tablets, we're thinking cars. How would you define and categorize the Kenta, maybe?
Yeah, so basically everything, right? Of course, tiny sensors, they just send data to cloud, and the cloud side will take they use the AI to analyze data. But certainly, some of the IoT devices are powerful enough to run the edge AI models by itself. We have also a camera product that can actually do some, lightweight machine learning technique to filter data before sending that to clouds. And, for example, motion detection and some quick OCR type of things can be done on the edge side. And then the cloud side can do much more heavy lifting with the Gen AI and the GPU backed AI. So certainly any device can be AI powered devices. It's just a matter of how big the model, how large each device, how what I'm saying, how large model that they can be capable of running inside. So that depending on the size of the AI model, maybe you can categorize those devices into different category and apply different solution to them.
Well, I would usually categorize it as, anything with an NPU on it. And, this year we're seeing kind of the emergence of those devices with AI PCs and primarily in, laptops, tablets, smartphones. But certainly that can go on to including a whole nother range of devices, including, connected cars, IoT devices, cameras, you name it, even like healthcare wearables, another great, smartwatches, as well as even like portable diagnostic devices for healthcare, really. Yeah, you name it. If it's a device, it can probably become an AI PC.
If it's a device, would you agree, Brian? Anything is out of scope?
I think these guys have covered it pretty well. I mean, what I would say is three of the things that came out from my visits last week is privacy. You can have you can create a more private experience on device. Secondly is the latency. I mean, latency is pretty good already, but on-device processing, clearly you've got no latency issues. You're not connecting to a network to do anything. I think the third thing is the energy efficiency part. I think it was mentioned by quite a few people that if you're not pinging the network all the time, A, your device is going to last longer, but B, there's a network efficiency and energy consumption benefit there that AI can deliver. So it's not all, I think AI sometimes gets a bad name, but it's about power consumption, just feed me. But actually, if you use AI, it can actually create a balance. So I think that, I think everything that everyone said is correct. But if I could just add one thing, right, is telcos are actually taking way more interest in this stuff. Before, I guess, this generative AI thing came along and the advent of on-device, when I was in operator land working in semiconductors, they were kind of like going, okay, we want to make sure that your baseband chip gets certified on a network, right? Now they're taking way more interest right at chip level because they really want to understand from cloud down to device, what are the benefits and how can I build services around these things and take more control of the supply chain as well. They want to have, we talked about sovereign supply chain resilience. This all plays a big part of this thing as well, I think. Well, you put me on the spot now. If the market is kind of split into two areas, especially in chips, you have what we call merchant silicon, which is off-the-shelf silicon that you can take and just put into a product. Then you've got the custom silicon business, where folks are actually saying, "Hey, we want to build our own custom processors to have more control." So if you look at the hyperscalers, it's all very public that AWS have invested in their own silicon silicon designs, Graviton, for example. Even now, telcos are actually investing directly into silicon startups and AI companies. So the use case is actually maybe not, like, hey, I want to do language processing or object detection on my device. I actually think it's actually a more strategic objective. I think it is going back to this whole kind of supply chain resilience. They want to have more control.
And I guess to just build on what Brian was saying right there is I see the kind of convergence between cloud AI and, on-device generative AI. Well, a lot of the use cases for on-device AI are really limited today. The processing that you want is going to be, done in a cloud server. And so putting, some of these chips and like routers and RAN infrastructure can then help, almost have that processing a little closer to the device so that, it doesn't travel all the way and you get some of the lag and some of the, I guess, not so good things about cloud AI. You're kind of converging the two so that then when, generative on-device AI catches up, it'll be a seamless transition.
Yeah, that's really good point. We have to find the right balance between what should be done on the edge side and what should be sent to cloud and the process there. We are providing connectivity, so people may think we want to push everything to cloud so that we can charge more data, but it's not the case. We rather want to do a right use case and right balanced approach for that makes sense. So the some lightweight processing using machine learning and some small model should be done on the edge side. And whenever you need some heavy full-fledged generative AI processing is needed, the data should be sent out to cloud. So that type of decisions also has to be done on the edge side.
And just to pick up another point you made, Rowan, that it's still emerging. So what's driving this trend? Supply side, is it demand side?
I would say demand side. When you think about all the things that you want an AI PC to do, I mean, it's beyond our capabilities today, and it's great to be forward looking and to have those ideas going. But I mean, today, the best use case that I could probably bring together in the frontline mobile worker use case would be like a police officer wearing a body camera. That's, while they interview a suspect or interview someone, a witness, and then, it goes back and you have AI on their computer automatically translating, starting that reporting process for them, makes their job a little bit easier. It's an awesome use case and it's super helpful for their job today, but that's probably the extent of where we are with capabilities. And eventually we want to get to, image analysis, doing stuff like drone UAV control, facial recognition, all that stuff. And that'll come in the future, but right now it's definitely limited.
Kenta, any views on great use cases that are available now?
Yeah, so we have done some integration to generative AI, and for example, the cameras can send data to storage, and that event can trigger OpenAI API call and detect what is going on in the image and trigger other device to alert customers or do something on the field. One example that I talked about was detecting some workers in the warehouse, they have to always have the safety gear, but if they don't wear a helmet, you want to send an alert to the alarm. That can be done with the traditional machine learning for sure, but building that and getting all the data and building models, training them and building the end-to-end system, that's a heavy lifting for many people. If at least you're not in the tech. But using the Gen AI, you can just take an image and put the natural language based prompt to say, if you have a person who is not wearing a helmet, just tell me the number of people and I'll send to the next system, so that next system can trigger an alarm system by using the another connection. So that type of things can be done with the AI, and it's just an example. We can do much more things by leveraging these latest AI capabilities. So that actually excites me, and we are excited to discuss with our customers and partners.
Great. So this outlines the valued use cases, but there's also limitations, I guess, of what AI you can adopt on devices or deploy. Brian, any thoughts from your side? What are some of the limits or boundaries of what's possible, or what are some of the criteria or requirements?
It's Jeff in the room, his creativity thing he said. I'm going to be honest with you. I think the pace that silicon development is running at the moment, I think actually over the next couple of years, we're going to see an exponential capability of on-device. The last couple of days I spent in the Valley really were big eye-openers for me. The pace of innovation and actually chip cycles usually was like 2 years, 3 years. It's moving way quicker than that. So I'm not the expert. I wouldn't say at the moment there's potentially a limit, but actually it's all going to be governed by how fast the supply chain decides to move together. So it's like folding space a little bit, right? So you've got the IP guys like ARM, for example, then you've got the chip guys, then you've got the OEMs, right? Whether that's a handset manufacturer or, a box vendor. Then you've got the carrier. The carrier is always at the end, right? Now it's like folding space. They're coming I shouldn't do that. They're folding space and we're going straight to the source, right? And I think that telco workloads have always been super complicated, right? They're always very, very big things. They're governed by a lot of, data implications. And I think this is why they're moving closer and closer to the chip guys. So I don't want to say there is a limitation. I think it's a limitation in time, not in capability. It's a big investment, by the way, right? We know that chip is a huge investment, but I can tell you they're all getting a bounce. And I'm not just talking about maybe the one chip guy that we all hear about when it comes to AI. There's a huge amount of innovation that's going on in CPU, not just GPU. And actually, when you look at, I think, you mentioned the size of the models that you can run on CPUs. I mean, I was hearing last week, it's something like 7 billion. A 7 billion parameter model can run on a fairly big CPU, but 1 to 7 billion, you don't need GPUs, right? You can be running this stuff locally on existing kit. I mean, this is a really interesting point to make. Legacy equipment that you have in the network doesn't necessarily need to be upgraded, right? There's a huge amount of opportunity to use existing infrastructure, existing compute to build creative applications. I think the other limitation, let's talk about it, the white elephant in the room, is monetization, right? At some point, you've got to think about am I going to monetize this stuff, right? So you can do the BAU stuff, which is productivity, efficiency gains. That's all really good stuff. But at the end of the day, you want to monetize some of the investments you're making here. And I think that is something that the industry needs to be a bit more clearer and transparent about, is how we're going to monetize.
What's your thoughts,
So, stepping back into the shoes of the frontline mobile worker industry and these enterprises, I would say price and the premiums of the end devices associated with AI PCs is probably the biggest limitation. You really need to justify these investments on, getting a tablet that has an NPU on it as opposed to the regular tablet that you're going for, especially a lot of these enterprises are extremely price sensitive. So you need to make sure that use case, that pain point's there. They're going to see that ROI by going for that, that more intelligent AI PC device, that's not just a future-proof use case, which is really what it's kind of being marketed as today.
Yeah, so there are some limitations, monetization, price points. Kenta, other limitations?
Yeah, a similar point, but when you use for example, the cloud API, OpenAI, Amazon, or Google, the cost associated with it is still high to run for example, the machine vision analytics for every second or things like that. So the cost has to go down to make it more available and make it more realistic to apply to real world scenarios. So as you said, Brian, there must be some kind of the optimized chipset for AI processing, because the cost is high, but OpenAI is not making money; they are losing money to run the service. Although the price is not cheap, so there has to be a fundamental change in the way AI models run on the computers and reduce the cost, like maybe building the AI optimized chip or NPU to lower the cost on the data center side as well. That must be needed. And once that's done, that can be applied to edge devices as well, and we can run models locally, and that will reduce the cost further down.
And then building on that, you referred to it already earlier, Brian. So what is really the impact on mobile networks? How do you build and manage networks? We have all these devices that are connected, AI applications and capabilities running on it. What does it mean?
Well, I was hoping my colleague Henry would be in the room so he can answer the network question. But let's paint a scenario, right, where, say, in 3 years, 4 years time, personal digital assistants, AI assistants are on your handset, right? Everyone's got them. And actually your interaction with that is going to be through voice, right? So you're giving most of your instructions through voice. That changes the shape of the traffic on the network, right? It changes the size of the capacity, the bandwidth you need. If, say, 25% or 30% of your traffic moves to that kind of model, then clearly there's going to have to be some kind of review of the architecture at the edge to ensure, because the latency that it's required to have a conversation like this is what you want to have, is a conversation with the assistant, is going to have to be almost instant. And that's why on device is going to become really, really important. So I think there's a lot of discussion needed around that. I mean, clearly we've got 3GPP who are looking at all this stuff through the next releases. 6G is coming down the line as well. So we have got time to prepare for it. But I think there has to be a very close cooperation with device manufacturers, with the foundation model guys, and box vendors, the RAN vendors, the cloud vendors, about how we're going to architect the future of the network to ensure that the user experience, because that's what it's going to come down to, is how good is the customer experience if you switch to this kind of model is going to be. So yeah, a lot of work to do. At the GSMA, we are already kicking off some work streams through the working groups on that. And we'd be, whoever's this in the room, we'd love to have conversations with you guys wherever you sit in the supply chain. So I think that's something we do need to keep a very, very close eye on.
Rowan, your thoughts, and also what opportunities can operators capture around this? How can they leverage these capabilities?
So I think a lot of it comes back to interoperability, and enterprises, they want to understand and control their networks at the end of the day. It's great to have a system integrator or a neutral host come in, do that on their behalf, but we're seeing more and more as more devices are adopted, more technologies are deployed, they want to have more control over the configurations of their network. And so things like open APIs, I think, are great for that, for being able to configure, control your networks to your specific use cases, scale it up and down as you can, and then just understanding the network. I think AI being implemented into a lot of these networks is a great way for enterprises and telcos themselves to kind of understand the needs of the network. Again, when to scale up, when to scale down. If you're looking at, for example, like a sporting event or something, when is the high traffic, when is low traffic, and that can be done automatically, and then analyzed going forward. So, I think the opportunities are immense. It's just about working together, which is hard in a competitive landscape.
Kenta, so imagine that you have all your IT devices connected and AI capable. What would be your recommendation to global network operators, how they can take advantage of these capabilities, or how they should enhance their networks?
Yeah. So while I was listening to you, Brian, I thought about that. Nowadays, have you tried the OpenAI advanced speech feature? Can you raise a hand? Maybe a few of you guys did. It's more like chatting with your friend or a family member. Today it's done in an over-the-top way. It goes over the internet. But if operators already have the high-quality voice services, VoLTE or the 5G services, maybe they can integrate with for example, those AI providers and provide the VoLTE, native VoLTE-based chat services and things like that can be also an interesting way to leverage telco capabilities. Maybe in the future, that could be like a more face-to-face communications with AI, with the generated video. That could be another use case. And also the AI can be a tool for operators to analyze their network as well. I think maybe previous panel also discussed about that, but we have also, as an operator, we have data, so many millions of devices are connecting every day and have session history and cell IDs from which the device is connected. Those types of data is too much for human to digest and understand what's going on. And we have built the system to store all the data in the data warehouse, and you can ask questions in the natural language. Like, for example, hey, for those devices connected in the US for the last 2 days, if you detect some unstable devices, just to list them up and show that on the dashboard. You can ask that in a way, in the natural language, and it will automatically generate SQL query and get the result back and show it on a visualized dashboard. That type of things can be done on the operator side, and that will help them to optimize their operations and quality of service and all that. So there are two side things in this. They can leverage their own technology, their capabilities to leverage for the AI use cases. Also, they can use the AI for their own network as well. And we are not exception. We are also doing that.
Thank you. And running already 2 minutes time. So just one final recommendation, Brian. So for mobile network operators, one key takeaway and one key recommendation.
Treat data as a product, right? Like a laptop. It's a product, right? And one thing I always think about is when I look at, like, say, a financial report from any company, do I see data as an asset in their financial report? So data is a product. You need to treat it as a product, design it to be a product that can be consumed easily. Can be, whether it's in the cloud, on-prem, on a device. It's going back to what Jeff said earlier on. If you don't have the data in the right place and in the right condition, it's all a bit moot, frankly. So I think let's go back to square one, which is get your data in order and treat it as a product.
Thanks. Raul, one key takeaway or recommendation for you?
Security. Simply put, well, I think that security needs to be top of mind. What's one of the great things about on-device AI is that the processing can be done offline. So if you have super sensitive, secure data that you need to keep, close to home, you can do it there without it being connected to the internet. But then if it does need to be connected to the internet, this technology is moving so rapid that it's scary. With each new advancement in technology, there comes new advancements in the threat that can come with it, especially when it comes to AI in terms of cyber attack potential and stuff like that. And so that's, I think, the number one thing that telcos need to keep in mind as they're, advancing this technology. It's great to see the use cases and stuff, but security always has to be back of mind. When we do our annual surveys for decision makers and across every industry, the top concern when evaluating mobile devices and even networks is always security. If not top, it's top three. So yeah, security.
Yeah, so the AI can enable to the vision of IoT. That's what we are thinking of, and the operators have a great opportunity to take an important role in it. That's something I always talk about. The data is definitely one thing that all the data passes through the telco network, and of course, the privacy is important and security is important. You can't just copy and use it for something else. But if the customers consent and allow them to store and share data with some other customers, there's this huge value in it. If we can do it securely and in a way that the privacy concern is addressed properly, that data plus AI can generate lots of value, and operator can be taking an important role to monetize it, and also not just monetizing it, just using it to generate new value and new knowledge based on data. That there's an opportunity for doing that on the operator side, and we are also trying to be part of it.
Great, thank you very much, and thank you very much to the audience. So, as a quick summary, we've heard that there's this opportunity really for any device to be connected and AI capabilities to be leveraged. But there are some constraints around monetization, around price points, and of course, paramount will be to ensure security, privacy, and that would also bring in the responsible use and design of these solutions. So thank you all very much to the panelists for sharing your insights and thoughts. So I'll now hand back to Peter to wrap up the summit. Thank you.
I would just say, I was about to say if we get a round of applause, but this was wonderful. Thank you.